Hello. This week we're going to work on web design and wireframing, so planning out our website before we start our code. So before we start any type of code, you need to figure out the subject that you want to make the website about. So that could be a portfolio, an encyclopedia. Everyone has seemed to figure out what they want to make, which is great. We're going to start by creating a hierarchy of information. So a hierarchy is a system or organization in which to rank groups, people, information according to status or importance. So here I have to make a portfolio website so I can apply to co-ops later. And I know that I want to display my portfolio, which is a bunch of images. I want to display my resume, my CV, and then something about me, something personal. And so I happen to write my list down and the importance that I want shown, where images are more important than resume and about me is the last. So within my portfolio, I know I have three things I want to display: my user experience design, graphic design, and web development. I'm more interested in showing my UX, so I'm going to star that. And that means maybe when I'm creating my portfolio, my UX portfolio steps will come first, followed by graphic and web development. I also know on my About page, I really want to highlight my work experience. This is just going to help me and you to figure out the information that needs to be displayed first or made prominent to the user or whoever's visiting your site. So your story comes off systematically. So finding the aesthetics of your website means choosing a color palette, choosing your fonts, and doing research of other sites that have the same subject as you and see how they function, look, and flow, especially if you're trying to be competitive. So I really like to use colors.com. It's fun because you can toggle through, it's interactive, and it'll help you find a color palette. When it comes to choosing fonts, you have the decision of serif, sans serif. Do you want handwriting? Do you want block letters? There's a lot of options out there. Keep in mind readability and how your information is displayed. Can the user actually read it? Just because it's a fun font doesn't always mean that they can understand what you're writing down. When it comes to research, there are a bunch of resources. You can go into Google and look up portfolio websites or encyclopedia websites or anything of that nature. You can always go to behance.com. I think that's a fun site because it shows a lot of designers and they can immediately post their work. And another thing you can do if you really want to get into the nitty gritty is figure out design trends. But I don't think we should be concerned about trends right now, just about how we're displaying our information in a clear, concise way. So color palettes, great. Check out colors.com. Next, I want to focus on type. And so within Google Fonts, I don't know if you guys seen this function up at the top, you can type in a header or a body text that you want displayed. So up here I put down portfolio and I can see how the letters function within that font and if it's displaying the information in a concise, clear way, but also fun and has a personality. There are some rules to web design to help with readability. And so that's to limit your color palettes to 4 to 5. If you do have a lot of colors, make sure they're within the same tonal value. Use a max of 3 fonts. That will help not overwhelm your user. I really like to use fonts that have multiple elements in their family because then I can choose a large font or a heavyweight for my headers, and then if I want the body will still be concise and I'll just use a smaller line weight and font. And then changing the line weight is a really great way to show a hierarchy of information. If it's bolded, that means it has a thicker line weight, and that's going to show importance to the user. It's bigger and easier to read, so it's just going to jump out of the page way easier. And so check out when you're trying to find fonts, see if they have multiple families within it. When you click on Google Fonts, it will open up and it'll say like italicized or bolded, and has some families have like 15 different fonts within it. and it's really useful to keep your information clear and concise. But then there's also resources where you can mix serif and sans serifs together. Be careful when doing that. Make sure they complement each other and it's still readable for the user. So when it comes to readability, check out line height. And so up here on the top right-hand corner, that's the default for HTML. It's okay to read, but it's not the easiest in the world. Underneath that, we have the line height of 1.6. And you can see how that little bit of separation really helps you to discern all the different words and makes it easier for reading. Versus the bottom one, where the line height is smushed together, it's barely readable. And so imagine seeing a bunch of text like line height 80, your user would not be able to read that at all. So here is the code displayed on how to do it. You can make a div class around your paragraph and specify that you want the line height to be 1.6. And by using 1.6, you don't have to specify whether it's a percentage or pixels. It's kind of a default setting. Now you can use contrast to also increase your readability. So the top right-hand corner, the gray text, that's a low contrast. It looks modern, but I wouldn't use this all over the page. It'll make it harder to read and discern what's an important element. It'd be good for like maybe a bottom of the page, a quick read up, but I wouldn't use heavy paragraphs within this style. And you can see how as the background gets darker and the font gets darker, it becomes very hard to read. Now in the bottom right-hand corner, we have a high contrast using complementary colors. We have this banner that's a green background and a lady in an orange shirt, and it really pops and brings the user to the page. Then to the left, we have high contrast using monotone color. With monotone colors, you can change the value, so whether it's dark or light within that color palette to show contrast. And here's a color wheel, in case anybody hasn't seen one for a while, showing the complementary colors. So next up, we're going to work on wireframing. And that's going to show the flow of the site, and it's a blueprint that you can follow. You don't have to stick to it. It's just helping your ideas to get out. So this image over here is a low fidelity. I'm just using pen and paper, but if you want to use high fidelity, you can check out Miro.com or use Adobe XD. I don't recommend using high fidelity right now. Just pen and paper is enough to get your ideas out and flowing and figuring out what you need to do. So here I figured I needed to use 4 different elements in my navigation, but this helped me figure out I only need to use 2. And so I figured out my landing page and what it looks like. I would use my name as a hierarchy, and that's a portfolio hierarchy. Some type of banner to draw my user in, and then I'm actually going to start my portfolio right off the bat. And then I figured I would have 2 buttons, 2 navigation elements, one for home, my landing page, and the other for my about page. And these elements will show up on both pages so the user can easily toggle between pages. Then I have a little bit of a longer wireframe showing how I will use my UX portfolio first, followed by my graphic, and this is helping me lay out my information. And now I'm not so overwhelmed when it goes to coding. I have a direction, there's a path, and I recommend everybody to do this. You don't have to, but this will help ease your designing process.